During the spring of 2000, in southern Florida, a group of amateur divers were exploring one of their favorite sites in the moonlight. Suddenly, they saw the silhouette of a fish in the beam of light, a fish no one had ever seen in the waters of the Atlantic. This unknown fish wasn't alone. The surprised divers discovered that there were many of them. One of the divers believed these were lionfish, but she wasn't certain. Lionfish come from Asia, and until now, no one had ever spotted any in American waters. To confirm her suspicion, the diver called the research center of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in Beaufort, North Carolina. She described what she saw to Paula Whitfield, a marine biologist, and was told that she had probably made a mistake.
I just couldn't believe it. It was like seeing, I don't know, a kangaroo in North America.
The diver hadn't made a mistake. Pterois volitans, or lionfish, is a scorpion fish indigenous to the Pacific and Indian Oceans that did in fact travel to the Atlantic coast of the United States at the end of the 20th century. In its native habitat, the lionfish is just a predator amongst many, but here in the Atlantic, it has become the terror of the sea. It devours everything in its path, even the youngest of fish. It feeds on the larvae of shrimp and lobster. In the mangroves or in the reefs, it gobbles up its fellow predators before they're big enough to attack it. Marine life suffers wherever the lionfish flourishes, and the tropical reefs are quickly becoming deserted. In 10 years, the lionfish has conquered a massive territory at a horrifying speed. Scientists call it the worst invader on the planet. How did the lionfish arrive in the Atlantic? Its natural habitat is thousands of miles away. The answer can perhaps be found off the coast of North Carolina, 3 hours by boat from the Beaufort Research Center. Dr. James Morris from the National Ocean Service has thoroughly studied Pterois volitans. This fisherman's son has taken the matter of the lionfish to heart. Dr. Morris and his team of volunteers are on the way to the wreck of the Neko to capture a large number of living specimens. This way he can continue to study the species in his laboratory and hope to solve the mystery of this invasion.
So we're here on a shipwreck diving site here off the coast of North Carolina, and this is a site that we've been collecting a number of lionfish over the years. These fish that the divers are bringing up today, we're going to be using for research at our laboratory.
The Neko is a German cargo ship that sank over 100 years ago in the Gulf Stream, the current that forms in the Caribbean Sea and moves up towards the North Atlantic. James Morris's volunteers must be able to handle the strength of the current. In North Carolina, the Gulf Stream is practically an underwater river running along the coast at a speed of 6 to 10 miles per hour. If a diver gets caught in the current, he will miss the wreck and may find himself stranded amongst the bull sharks that circle the zone. The warm waters of the Gulf Stream are ideal for underwater life. James Morris sends his team to dive around the Neko regularly because he knows that they will find many lionfish, particularly big ones. Thanks to the abundant food, many specimens in the area reach the species' maximum size, about 16 inches. But don't be fooled by its size. Pterois volitans is the dominating species around the Neko. With each passing day, it leaves less and less room for its competitors. Although the lionfish is not a good swimmer, it's difficult to capture it alive without hurting it. Diving at a depth of 145 feet is a considerable strain on the heart and the body. The divers must therefore economize their energy in order to avoid tiring too quickly. They must also watch out for the fish's poison spines. The sting is extremely painful, and the suffering is so intense that it can provoke a serious diving accident with terrible consequences. The team has captured 30 specimens. This should be enough for the laboratory. It's now time to surface, because at this depth, the oxygen gets used up very quickly. These dives seldom last more than a half hour. Back on the boat, the captured fish are immediately transferred to a tank containing seawater.
That's a good haul, that one. Big female here.
There's a big difference in pressure between the depths and the surface. The fish haven't had time to decompress, and their bellies are swollen with air. To keep them alive, James Morris pierces their swim bladder with a hollow needle. The air is able to escape, and the fish quickly returns to normal.
There we go.
Back at the Beaufort Research Center, James Morris transfers the fish into pools filled with continually recycled seawater. This will be their temporary home. Several of the fish captured at the Neko wreck are dissected the very next day. Their DNA will be analyzed. The systematic comparative analysis of the DNA of all the lionfish collected in this region of the Atlantic should lead the research team back to the original strain. They'll then be able to understand how the species arrived here and to locate where the invasion began.
Marking them in terms of...
Professor Thomas Schultz, a geneticist at Duke University in North Carolina, has been in charge of this study since the lionfish first appeared in the area.
So using the genetic tools and these molecular markers that we're seeing here, these genetic polymorphisms, one of the things that we're hoping to be able to tell is how many fish were originally introduced into the east coast of the United States. So, you know, when you look at two fish and they look morphologically to be very similar, you can't distinguish whether or not those fish came from the same parents or not. And so using these genetic polymorphisms, we can actually look at the amount of genetic diversity that's present in these invading populations and try to track back to see what's the minimum number of fish that were introduced into the United States initially.
Genetics research shows that we have a very few number of lionfish that were introduced into the Atlantic. Probably fewer than 10, which was introduced into the United States, likely from the aquarium trade. It is a very popular aquarium species that is imported into the U.S. from Indonesia, from the Philippines. We know that many thousands of lionfish have been imported into the United States in the last decade.
Thanks to the work done by Dr. James Morris and Professor Thomas Schultz, we now know how the lionfish arrived in the waters of the Atlantic. It all began In Florida, at the end of the 20th century, during the 80s. In Miami's and Palm Beach's famous luxury seafront apartments, exotic fish aficionados decided that their lionfish didn't really belong in the family aquarium. They didn't have the heart to kill them, so they released them into the nearby ocean waters below.
The reason lionfish were introduced is still not clear, and we know that is a bad idea. And there are many outreach campaigns and efforts to try to inform the public about the impacts of releasing your pets into the wild.
One might assume that the specimens set free in Florida, so far from their natural habitat, would still stand little chance of surviving. Not only did they survive, but they multiplied at a startling rate and set out to conquer the Western Atlantic simultaneously on two fronts. In the south, near the Gulf of Mexico and the Bahamas. In the north, near Georgia and near South and North Carolina. Once it had conquered the Caribbean and Central America, the lionfish found its way to South America.
So there are many different aspects of lionfish life history and their biology and ecology that have really allowed this invasion to progress and for lionfish to become one of the most aggressive invaders on the planet.
In the Bahamas, the deterioration of the marine ecosystem is so disturbing that the government has decided to take on the lionfish. The Marine Resources Services have launched a program to research and combat the lionfish. Nicola Smith, a researcher in marine biology at the University of Nassau, heads this initiative.
And Jason, you don't have defog either?
Nicola, along with her assistant Skylar Miller, chose the island of Eleuthera to the east of the archipelago as the experimentation base. Their mission is to establish a combat protocol. The first phase of the protocol consists of determining to what extent the lionfish has colonized the island's reefs. Nicola and her team have established a study perimeter. From there, square foot by square foot, the team will inventory all the different species of fish in the selected zone. The results are even more alarming than expected. The lionfish is everywhere. It occupies every crevice and every hole. Not only that, but many naturally occurring species like the surgeonfish, the grouper, or the parrotfish have all but disappeared.
I'm very worried about the future of marine ecosystems in the Bahamas because of the lionfish invasion. Are we going to have reefs dominated by lots of lionfish with very few native species? This can have impacts for commercial fisheries and recreational diving, and of course just the ecology of coral reef fish, where you're going to get dominance by one species.
How did the lionfish eliminate all other species so quickly and so completely? Dr. Justin Grubich studies the kinematics of underwater predators. He works on the physical structure of fish and their movements. These factors can then determine their efficiency as predators. Understanding how the lionfish captures its prey will give us insight into the predatory mechanism. The speed at which the predator swallows its prey isn't visible to the naked eye, nor to an everyday video camera filming at 25 frames per second. Justin Grubich's research requires special equipment that can only be used in a laboratory setting. This lionfish was captured 2 weeks ago. It was immediately placed in an aquarium where it adjusted to captivity, bathed in a calming red light. Justin Grubich has been feeding it with tweezers. This lengthy protocol is coming to an end, and the scientists can now film the predatory act with a high-speed camera. Justin gives it a shrimp, and the camera records it all at a speed of 2,000 frames per second.
Here we have a fantastic strike of the lionfish. Lionfish are unique among fish predators in that they have incredibly protrusible jaws. They use suction to generate a suction pulse of water that draws the prey into the mouth. The human eye sees at about 30 hertz. That means at about 0.33 milliseconds. And you can see here by this time stamp that this behavior of striking at the prey is occurring in 1/3 of the time that the human eye can perceive. And you'll see here that the jaw actually protrudes over 40%, almost 40% of its head length. And when it reaches its maximum jaw protrusion, it expands its head from the side. And it what basically like sucking through a straw, it sucks in the prey.
Experience tells us that the lionfish achieves complete jaw protrusion in 10 milliseconds and sucks in the shrimp in 14 milliseconds. The predatory act lasts a total of 24 milliseconds.
When we think about kinematics of how the jaws in fishes work, you got to keep in mind that the skeleton of a fish, or the skull of a fish rather, the skull of a fish is actually made up of over 20 different bones. So here we have a skeleton made by a colleague of mine, Steve Husky, and you can see how intricately aligned all the different bones are in the head of a lionfish.
A digital 3D image reveals the complex movements of the 20 skull bones working together to make the predator's jaw protrude.
Now, when we compare this lionfish to other predators that have been examined using this kind of kinematic analysis, we see that it falls out about 3rd place among all fishes in terms of the amount of jaw protrusion it can generate. The all-time champion, of course, is Epibulus insidiator, known as the sling jaw wrasse, which is also common in the Red Sea. Here we have a cichlid known as Petinia splendida. It's a South American species that is found in the freshwater Amazon region. And then we have the lionfish. Among marine fishes, it's very, very effective in terms of how it can feed on its prey.
The lionfish's prey doesn't stand a chance, and the lionfish feeds all the time. Understanding the amount of food he consumes each day will help evaluate the scope of his predatory power.
And making it thin. So like he can make a sheet of water.
James Morris has calculated the daily amount of food the lionfish needs.
Release the gas that's bound, that's super.
One of the fish captured in the Neko has been put in a respirometer, a chamber containing circulating reservoir water.
Pump through the chamber and into.
By measuring the oxygen dissolved in the fresh water as it enters and exits the chamber, it's possible to calculate how much oxygen the lionfish has used up.
Is respiring and it's removing oxygen.
From there, a biological model of the species can be created once the food consumption factor is subtracted.
The oxygen levels of the water coming into the chamber and the oxygen levels of the water exiting the chamber. So we've learned that lionfish can consume as high as 6% of their body weight per day over time at some of the higher temperatures. And when calculating that feeding rate, we've learned that it can have quite an impact on the fish community. In some cases, lionfish can remove a considerable biomass of small forage fishes and can even deplete that biomass, causing change to the reef fish community, including biodiversity and forage base that we know is really important for commercially important species like snapper and grouper.
This fish is especially voracious. This huge appetite transposed onto a 165-pound man would represent over 10 pounds of food per day. Back in the Bahamas, at the Eleuthera Reef, Nicola Smith and her team have begun the 2nd phase of their protocol. The idea is to determine whether lionfish eradication in a specific zone will have an impact on the overall marine population. All the lionfish have been mercilessly eliminated. Now the specified observation zone is clean. There isn't one single lionfish in this reference zone. From this moment onwards, the zone is watched closely. Nicola and her team will find out how much time it takes for the colony's population level to return to where it was prior to the cleaning. Once they have this information, they will know at what rate to eradicate the lionfish in a given zone in order to have an effect on repopulation. It's all about controlling the invasion. The baby fish, only a few days or a few weeks old, look quite inoffensive. But they cannot be spared because they could recolonize the reef at great speed, and this would compromise the results of the study. The divers have gone through the reef with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that not a single specimen has been missed. The protocol is strict and requires that all specimens, dead or alive, be removed. Not even a carcass can remain in the experimentation zone.
Pretty much it was a good dive, but a lot of lionfish considering we just removed fish from this reef 3 months ago.
Okay.
Okay, so the gape height and width.
Yep. Roger that. Gape height, we got 5 centimeters.
Okay.
Gape width is 4 centimeters.
The dissection will provide unique information on the physiology, biology, and ecology of the living organisms. The fish's weight, its length, the length and height of its mouth will all be entered into the species database. Nicola opens the stomach of the dissected fish. The stomach of a lionfish can dilate up to 30 times its empty volume. This is what provides the fish with such a voracious appetite.
This is a crab.
Oh, crab.
Yep. See the
Yep. Okay, so we had a clinging crab,
Yep.
digestion level 3. And again, that volume was
That volume was 2 milliliters.
2.
Studying the stomach contents makes it possible to follow the dietary evolutions of the lionfish in a given zone and to measure the impact of these changes on the environment.
Lionfish have colonized virtually every marine habitat in the Bahamas, from shallow water coral reefs to deep water coral reefs to mangroves to seagrass areas to marinas to sandy beaches around artificial structures. This makes local control efforts very difficult because we have to target not 1 or 2 habitat types, but multiple habitat types over an entire archipelago.
The scope of the task seems somewhat overwhelming, but the mission moves forward. At a depth of 100 feet, Skylar and the team have started to clean another reef. The movements of the injured fish have caught the attention of a grouper. The grouper is a common predator in the Atlantic. Like most predators, the grouper is always on the lookout for prey and is not scared off by the presence of divers. Skylar is often amazed at how daring the groupers are. To the grouper, the lionfish is a newcomer to Bahamian waters and isn't on his list of usual prey. Observation has shown that only on rare occasions will the grouper eat small or young prey. If the divers hadn't wounded this adult lionfish, the grouper probably wouldn't have shown an interest. The grouper has taken care to swallow its victim head first, probably because it instinctively mistrusts it. And he is right to be cautious. Underneath the lionfish's pretty bands lie its poisonous spines. Accidental contact with these spines would be painful and perhaps even dangerous. Skylar Miller tirelessly repeats these words of caution to Bahamian students who run the risk of facing these poisonous spines whenever they swim.
Near beaches? Warm areas. Everywhere. Yeah, we have them everywhere in all sorts of habitats. All on the dorsal side here. And how many dorsal spines do you think that a lionfish has? Anybody know? So there are 13 spines on the dorsal fin of this species of lionfish, okay? Remember how Nicola said there are many different species of lionfish? But the one that we find here in the Bahamas has 13 dorsal spines, and these are each independent. They can move around. And as you can see, this skin, right, slides down very easily away from the spine. Okay, so this means that the tissue, the venomous tissue, is actually contained within this, all right? So if I touch it, it's okay. If I poke myself, envenomate myself, then that's where the problem is. So even though this fish has been dead for a few days, even though the spine is removed, it still possibly contains venom that can harm me.
So the venom glands, when they are disrupted, they release venom into the victim. And the venom is a neurological toxin that affects the nervous system. It can cause extreme pain in humans, allowing for things to occur like paralysis, temporary paralysis, blistering, extensive swelling, and very extreme pain for several hours. It may be similar to a wasp sting, an extreme wasp sting at first, that will gradually get worse. There have been some cases, some very rare cases, in which people have died from lionfish and scorpionfish stings. We're not aware of any in the US currently. This is the spine itself here. You can see the hard, bony structure with the tip. This is the spine. These are the grooves of the spine here. And then this is the venom gland.
The lionfish doesn't have a venom gland, so to speak. The poison is enclosed in hundreds of little pouches along the length of the spine. When the spine enters the victim's flesh, the skin tears, the pouches burst, and the poison is absorbed by capillary action. The lionfish has 13 poisonous spines on its dorsal fin, 3 on the anal fin, and 1 on each of the 2 pelvic fins, a total of 18 spines, defending it from predators on all sides.
In the Red Sea, we see that the lionfish is in balance with the natural ecosystem. The lionfish is a native predator of the Red Sea, but it also has competitors. What we see in the Red Sea is we see lots of grouper species that are about the same size and are also very effective predators. So when we see lots of groupers, we see very few lionfishes, and vice versa.
Unfortunately, this competition between predators in the same category doesn't exist in the Atlantic. Groupers and lionfish quietly observe each other without demonstrating any hostile behavior.
In the ocean of the Southeast and tropical Caribbean Sea, there are really no natural predators that have been documented to actually be preying upon lionfish at a rate that can control their local densities.
There is no doubt that wherever it settles, Pterois volitans becomes a super predator that dominates and doesn't share. But this doesn't explain how this rockfish, which is sedentary by nature, has managed to colonize such huge territorial expanses. Nature has made it easy for the lionfish to spread and disperse, thanks to its method of reproduction. The reproduction of the lionfish in its natural habitat has never been observed or filmed. It's only by observing the reproduction of neighboring species that we can attempt to reconstitute it. The male performs a mating parade to seduce the female. When the female accepts his attentions, she rises to the surface and releases a gelatinous mass filled with hundreds of thousands of eggs. The male then showers this mass with his sperm and fertilizes the eggs. The jelly-like mass is carried away by the currents. As it drifts, it dissolves and disintegrates, leaving the eggs to disperse over considerable distances. Most of the eggs in the young fish are eaten by all sorts of predators, but so many are fertilized at one time that there are enough survivors to allow Pterois volitans to expand its empire. In addition, the species is particularly fertile.
Lionfish have a very robust and vigorous reproductive biology. They are capable of reproducing every 3 to 4 days. The females can release over 2 million eggs per year, and they can become sexually mature within a year.
On the island of Eleuthera, the second phase of the protocol has ended. The lionfish have been eliminated and have now returned. For Nicholas Smith, the third and final phase can begin. It's time to analyze the results of the data that has been collected.
So the first 6 months of data looks really exciting. We found that if you remove lionfish once every 3 months or once every 6 months from coral reefs, we were able to reduce lionfish numbers by 50% or more than if we'd done absolutely nothing at all. What's even more exciting is the fact that removing lionfish only once every 6 months seems to have the same ecological impact as removing lionfish once every 3 months, in terms of we're having the same number of lionfish densities at 3 versus 6 month removals. This is exciting because this means that in terms of management, we can get the same ecological effect for half the amount of effort. So this looks really hopeful because it looks as if we will be able to control lionfish in small localized areas with not a lot of effort.
We now know that elimination in a limited zone has a significant impact on the lionfish population. But how can we treat vast regions with countless reefs? The Bahamian government is counting on the local fishers. An educational campaign has been launched in an effort to convince them to overcome their prejudice against the lionfish. They were hesitant at first, but they have begun to change their minds.
Bahamians, natives get into eating them. Some natives get into eating them. And before, when they came first, everybody thought that the meat was poison because they understood that the lionfish had a poisonous venom. But people are now growing out of that fear and beginning to eat the meat.
Relying on the small-scale fishermen may seem pointless, but the local fishermen are highly active and many. They know all the reefs by heart. But their role can only be a limited one. Most of them can't dive deeper than 65 feet below the surface. That's not deep enough for this fish, for we still don't know at what depths it can live in its new home.
Wait till you start suiting up and...
Didier Noirot is a top-notch professional diver. Didier and Walt Stearns are prepping for a deep-water dive that will take them beyond the 230 feet mark. Will they find lionfish at such depths?
Okay, clear.
The divers must use a very complex system known as the recycler in order to descend to such depths. The recycler provides them with a special gas mix called the trimix. This mix is specifically adapted to high-pressure situations. After a long descent, Didier Noirot and Walt Stearns reach a wreck. The area seems at first to be free of lionfish. Is Pterois volitans not able to withstand such depths? Or did this 400-pound grouper take care of him? The suspense doesn't last for long. Lionfish are indeed here. Once again, the usual pattern is confirmed. The lionfish have taken over the wreck, and with the exception of the massive grouper, all the other species have virtually disappeared.
Do we see right here?
We went down to 265 feet, and there were still lionfish. Nothing seems to stop them. We continued further down, even further, and we saw as many as we had further up, in the 65 to 100 feet range near the reefs. Here we are at a very deep wreck, and there are still lionfish.
Still lionfish down there. Oh, they're not going to go away.
The Bahamian government is desperate in its fight and has no choice but to resort to enlisting the help of industrial fishers. Frederick Arnett from the Ministry of Agriculture and Fishing is going from boat to boat to encourage the fishing bosses to capture lionfish.
All right. Yeah, we saw plenty of it. All right, because you know there's a big problem since there's invasive species. Yeah, so. What they're doing now, they're killing out all the fish. Yeah, man.
In 2009, we decided to do something about it. We developed the National Lionfish Response Plan. The plan serves to maintain marine ecosystems, as well as to control lionfish populations and amend fisheries regulations. The lionfish problem is such a huge problem that one study actually shows that it has reduced prey species down to about 65%. So what are we going to do about it? We're going to eat them to beat them.
In order to set an example, Estefan Shaker, the chef at one of Nassau's finest restaurants, has put lionfish on the menu. Pterois volitans is a red fish, similar to other scorpion fish that are a delicacy in gastronomic cuisine. Once its venomous spikes are removed, the lionfish can be prepared just like any other fish. The fillets are easy to carve and have very few bones. The meat is tender yet firm and very tasty. When lionfish is well prepared, it's one of the finest exotic fishes.
But when you do have it on your menu, a lot of people are so excited to have it because they can't really have it any other place. So, all in all, it's a win-win situation. You save the environment, and you have a good tasting product on your menu.
Turning the lionfish into an edible fish won't suffice to slow down its proliferation. Only specimens of a certain size are worth fishing. This gives lionfish plenty of time to reproduce and to continue destroying the marine ecosystem. Has the lionfish won the battle? In 2009, lionfish reached the coast of Honduras in the Gulf of Mexico. In 3 years, they colonized the seabed, and more specifically, the marine park on the island of Roatan. The Honduran authorities, aware of the drastic state of affairs in the Bahamas, reacted immediately.
That's what I'm talking about.
The government has launched a campaign to fight the invader. Harpoons have been distributed to local populations, and underwater hunting competitions are organized all year long. Thousands of lionfish are regularly eliminated thanks to this initiative. But Nick Bach, the park's biologist, isn't satisfied with these results. Some other additional method needs to be found. Hoping to help Nick Bach in his research, Carl Stanley invites him to take a submarine dive. The best way to fight the enemy is to observe it tirelessly, and learn more about it every day. This military-style motto is perfectly suited to the war against Pterois volitans waged by these biologists. In this strange machine that he has built himself, Carl takes Nick further into the depths. They want to determine at what depth lionfish is surrounding the island of Roatan. As they descend, the daylight is slowly absorbed by the darkness of the water. At 250 feet, everything has turned gray. At 500, they're in pitch darkness. They continue their descent down to 600 feet, which is their goal depth. Nick is very focused. He has never been down this far before.
You should try to get this. I think he might get a fish here. He might get a fish here.
He's pinned them all up against the side.
Yeah. Oh, there's a big one by that coral.
Oh yeah, there it is. Look like it's hunting. There's all the little juvenile fish there, huh?
Yeah.
Gonna get one.
That's a big one.
It sees the one it wants. Look at it.
That's a good sized fish.
Oh.
This one seems more to be just hunting, not even minding us being here.
Yeah.
The many hours of observation have convinced Nick that in order to fight Pterois volitans, they must join forces with a natural predator.
Here's a big specimen. A nice lionfish here. It's all on its own. You might notice there's not really any fish around it. It looks pretty swollen stomach, so pretty much eats everything around it and then moves to another spot. So Carl.
Yes.
On a normal subdive,
yeah,
when you're kind of going down to 1,000 feet, how many lionfish do you think you see?
On a 1,000-foot dive, maybe 10. But you see them. I've seen them as deep as 800 feet, but mostly you see them. You see the most between 200 and 400 feet.
Okay, so they even go down to 800 feet, but most of them are around 200-300 feet.
200 to 400.
So finding one here at 500 feet isn't abnormal, but they're mostly abundant higher up.
Yeah, if we drive along at 300 feet, we'll see just constantly.
Are we heading up or what?
I'm gonna look at it.
If this natural predator is to be effective, it must be capable of eating adult lionfish that swim at various depths. Here in the Atlantic, there's only one marine animal that fits the bill: the shark. Giacomo Pallavincini, a researcher and the founder of Roatan's Shark Legacy Project, has convinced Nick Buck that the shark could be the ally everyone is hoping for. The two researchers are going to attempt an experiment in an area filled with sharks. The area is still infested with lionfish despite last week's hunting competition. The Caribbean shark can measure up to 10 feet and is the largest predator in the Roatan Reef. But like the grouper and other predators in this part of the world, the shark is indifferent to the lionfish. It doesn't know that this newcomer's good to eat. The fact that sharks are not naturally attracted to lionfish is not a problem for Giacomo. Thanks to Samuel Gruber's work in Florida in the 70s, we know that sharks can be taught. Giacomo has decided to train the sharks in the area to view the lionfish as a potential prey. The shark doesn't appear to be intimidated by the lionfish's spines. The experiment seems conclusive, but many scientists are opposed to this approach.
Shark feeding has been controversial for a long time, and also obviously shark feeding with lionfish, because it can change the behavior of the sharks in their natural environment. Now, yes, it is true that it does everything that we do on the water, it will affect their behavior. Introducing the lionfish to the sharks, which is a new organism that they never seen before, especially in the Caribbean, has helped, because we only did a couple of times, probably 2 or 3 months of it, and then after that we haven't even fed the sharks with them. And it seems that they have recognized the lionfish as a food source without us feeding them to them. So yes, it does has an effect with sharks, but I think in a bigger picture, we have helped the reef, and we hope we help it for a future and permanent future.
Even if Giacomo Palavancini is right, which remains to be seen, sharks will only be able to act at best as regulators. Will we ever be able to stop the spread of the lionfish?
I would say that I am not optimistic about the future of lionfish. I see the lionfish invasion progressing, continuing to expand in both its distribution. We now have lionfish in the southeastern Caribbean. We will likely see them continue to invade along the coast of South America, perhaps as far south as the northern coast of Argentina.
How far will the lionfish extend its empire? It seems insatiable.
Lionfish do not survive when the mean winter bottom water temperatures go below 15 degrees Celsius. So this 15-degree mark appears to be a threshold where above that lionfish survive and thrive, but below that, you just don't even really find them at all. But their likely distribution is probably going to extend all the way from Cape Hatteras, North Carolina in the north, all the way south to the northern coast of Argentina. Or we're not thinking that it's likely that lionfish will disperse through the Panama Canal, probably for a couple of reasons. The water's kind of cold in the Pacific, so there's a big temperature difference between the Pacific and the Atlantic, as well as there being freshwater lakes that could also be a barrier to dispersal. However, we really don't know for sure whether they can disperse through the Panama Canal.
No one knows if the lionfish will be able to cross the barrier of the Panama Canal. But if it does, this merciless predator, moving unhindered at the speed of the underwater currents, will pursue its conquest of the West.